So, as we kick off 2019, you may be wondering, what is the best value MacBook Pro that I can buy? So, to offer good value, a used MacBook Pro has to be reasonably affordable compared to other MacBooks. It has to have good performance for not only 2019, but for at least a few years in the future. It has to be very, very reliable, and lastly, it has to hold its value well. This last point is a major upside of owning a MacBook Pro. Once you get past the initial sort of 2 to 3 years of depreciation, they depreciate very slowly, which allows you to stretch your dollar and make every dollar count. So, without any further ado, the best used MacBook Pro for all-around total value, in my opinion, is this. The late 2013 15-inch MacBook Pro with dedicated graphics. This thing is one of the most solid MacBooks I have ever owned or used, and believe me, I've owned and used a lot of MacBooks. For one, there's the price. As I mentioned earlier, MacBooks hold their value very, very well. I have owned this machine for about 15 months, and when I bought it, the going rate for a machine with my specs and condition was about $900. Today, I could sell this machine for about $800 to $850. Once you factor in selling fees and inflation, if I were to sell this machine today, it would only have cost me around $150, maybe a little less, to own this machine for over a year. That's really not bad at all. Granted, my machine is worth above average asking price for these laptops because it is in absolutely fantastic condition. Its battery only has 70 cycles, and it has the upgraded 2.6 GHz Core i7 over the standard 2.3. You can find these machines pretty regularly for about $700 to $750 in more average condition with more battery cycles and a less upgraded processor, which really is not bad at all for a 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. So, what are you getting for your cool $750? Let's run through the full specs. The model that I recommend is the higher tier dual graphics model. While the base had a 2 GHz i7, 8 GB of RAM, and Iris graphics, the DG model comes equipped with a 2.3 GHz Core i7 4850HQ, or like mine, the upgraded 2.6 GHz Core i7 4960HQ. All DG models come equipped with 16 GB of soldered-on 1600 MHz DDR3 RAM and at least a 512 GB SSD that could be upgraded to 1 TB. The absolutely gorgeous 2880 by 1800 Retina display is powered by an NVIDIA GT 750M with 2 GB of GDDR5 VRAM. Side note, when looking for dual graphics 15-inch Retina MacBook Pros, if there was a integrated graphics version available for that year, make sure to look closely at the listing. Sometimes people would take the base model with the integrated graphics and would bump up the RAM, storage, and CPU, so that if you just look at those things, it looks like a dual graphics model, but usually a seller will say CTO or BTO or some other clue to let you know that this model doesn't have the dedicated graphics. That being said, make sure you look closely because you don't want to be the person who gets stuck with an integrated graphics MacBook Pro that you didn't mean to buy. Also, you can easily weed out integrated graphics models by looking at RAM and CPU speed. All the dedicated graphics models have at least a 2.3 GHz i7 and 16 gigs of RAM. Anyways, why the late 2013 in particular? What sets it apart from other MacBook Pros of this generation? First, there's really nothing controversial about this machine. If you look at the lineup of 15-inch Retina MacBook Pros, this one stands out. The 2012 and early 2013 Retinas are getting on a bit with Ivy Bridge processors and 1 GB graphics cards. There's also a known graphics issue with those models. Then we look at the newer machines. You have the mid-2014 MacBook Pro Retina. It's literally the same laptop, like exactly the same. Okay, so it's not exactly the same, but basically the only difference between the late 2013 and the mid 2014 is that the base model has 16 GB of RAM standard in 2014, and then they bumped up the processors a little bit across the board. But they're still Haswell, so the performance gains are pretty much non-existent. And then we get to the sort of fan favorite 2015 Retina MacBook Pro. The 15-inch is beloved because it's kind of the most recent, most modern MacBook Pro before the Touch Bar and the butterfly keyboard arguably ruined the MacBook Pro in some people's minds. In fact, if you do have a little bit more cash to spend, say around the $1,000 mark, I would recommend going for this model because it has much better graphics. Apart from that though, all you really get in addition to the late 2013 is a Force Touch trackpad, which is of arguable importance, and that's pretty much it. The processors are still Haswell processors, so they perform very, very similar to the late 2013, and I don't really think that the graphics are worth an extra like $250. So I still think that the late 2013 gives better value. Then of course there's the Touch Bar generation, which is obviously going to be better in terms of performance. However, they're much more expensive, and there are some controversies and reliability issues associated with those models. So the late 2013 may be getting on a bit. Mine's about to turn 5 years old as it was manufactured in January of 2014, but that doesn't mean that its performance is bad. To see how this machine performs, I fired up some games and benchmarks. Starting with Cinebench R15, we saw a respectable score of 605, which compared quite well to the base model with the 2 GHz i7 that only scored 559. The story was very similar in Unigine Heaven, where the GT750M creamed the Iris integrated graphics, scoring 279 versus just 160 in the Extreme preset. Moving over to some light gaming, CSGO ran very well, holding at 60 FPS in 1200p. Meanwhile, over in Civ 5, frame rates were looking very good and stable thanks to that quad-core processor, even as the Empire got a lot larger. Lastly, in Final Cut Pro, I have to say this thing does a great job. 4K video editing is a bit much for this fella, but then again, 4K video editing stumps even my much more expensive 2015 5K iMac with a screamer Core i7-6700K at 4 GHz after just a little bit of time, so I really don't hold it against this MacBook Pro. 1080p is the sweet spot for this guy. I actually used to use this for a good amount of my videos before I started shooting in 4K, and it could get through a timeline flawlessly. It really was indiscernible from my much more expensive 2016 Skylake Touch Bar MacBook Pro from an editor's standpoint. Granted, I'm sure the 2016 is going to be faster if you look at render times and whatnot, but from the point of view of someone using the machine, it's not really a noticeable difference between the 2016 and this 2013 if you're editing in 1080p, so the cost savings to go down to the 2013 make it very tempting. You certainly won't have any issues editing 1080p videos unless you really layer on a ton of effects, 3D, motion graphics, and the like. The only thing that really detracts from this experience are the fans, which can be a little bit loud. Once you get cooking in Final Cut or other intensive applications, they are definitely audible. Part of what makes this MacBook Pro a good choice is how solid this generation of MacBook Pro is. I have no complaints about the design and functionality of these machines. The keyboard is Apple's excellent backlit chiclet style before Butterfly arguably ruined their reputation for making good keyboards. The multi-touch glass trackpad is, as usual, sublime. The display is gorgeous, vibrant, and has excellent viewing angles, and port selection is on point. 2 USB 3, 2 Thunderbolt 2, HDMI, SD card, headphone jack. Perfect. Anyways, this generation of MacBook Pro debuted back in 2012. That was almost 7 years ago, and despite that age, this device still looks fresh and clean. It's not overly thick, and the bezels, while large, aren't too fat. This design is just classy and timeless. Add to that the fact that this machine is likely to be supported for probably 2 to 3 years under official macOS updates, and probably several more years with patchers and other tools, and you've got yourself a nice machine that can last a good while, perform well under demanding tasks, and look damn good doing it. So that'll do it for today's video. Let me know what you think your favorite MacBook is down in the comments section below. I'm interested to see how this thing stacks up against what people's fan favorites are. I personally have had this laptop for 15 months, as I said, and I've had zero issues with it. It is a phenomenal laptop, the battery life is fantastic, and I can't recommend it enough. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. As usual, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Miani, and don't forget to join my subreddit if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.